Welcome to Crawlspace. I'm here today with Lance in the Crawlspace studios. What's up?
What is going on? How are you today?
I'm well. We're just fresh off this trip from CrimeCon in Nashville, CrimeCon 2018. It was just so fun, Lance.
It was amazing. We're settling back in here in Wormtown in the Crawlspace studios, but I'm sort of on a post CrimeCon down here. You know,
I'm a little depressed too, to be honest.
Met so many good people out there, so many fellow peers, and the fans. The fans are just
they're
so
amazing.
Passionate.
It's inspiring at one point, and it's also just sad because we don't get treated like that anywhere else. Like you would think we do, maybe. But like here in Wormtown, you think the people in this building know what we do. They don't have a clue what we do.
For example, the lunch we ordered today, which we order pretty much the same thing every time, and you still need to tell them exactly where the address is. See, we're back to reality here.
So we met a bunch of people at CrimeCon, so thank you if you met with us. That was really fun. Again, like a lot of people came up to us and said, this is really cool, but you don't understand. It was cooler for us than it was for you. Trust us on that. We don't get treated like celebrities.
Right. One of our new friends, Ellie, had come up to us, and she was there last year, and she is from overseas, and she was describing how nervous she was last year when she met us and how nervous she was this year. And I was trying to tell her that we were probably more nervous when you have the fans coming up to you, and it's just, I don't know, like you said, I don't know how to act in that situation, so we just act normal, I guess.
And we got to meet a couple of patrons of our Crawlspace page. In case you aren't familiar, check it out at patreon.com/crawlspacepodcast. But we met Kim and Carol. So that was really fun meeting them and talking with them. And also Aurelia, who we know met last year at CrimeCon. And we continued the tradition with Aurelia of going to a minor league baseball game the Sunday of CrimeCon because it ends at noon. So that was fun.
Yeah, very cool. We met Erica in a special VIP conversation. And I know she forgives us, but we were a little bit late to that. We hung out with her for a while. She actually got a bonus. She got to talk to Ottavia Zappala and to Justin from Generation Y, who were passing by the room and thought they would pop in. So she got a little bonus by having listening to all of us banter for a little while.
Right. You never know what's going to happen at CrimeCon, Lance. Right as we walked in, Kelly Siegler walked out. That was kind of cool. A lot of celebrities there. The Dateline guy, Keith Morrison, was out at the bar one night. That was kind of fun.
And the new celebrity, Paul Holes, #HotForHoles, I think he's just entered a new chapter, unexpected chapter of his life, right? He didn't think that this would be happening.
Well, I mean, I think he hoped it would, but
I don't think he thought he would be at a true crime convention, become a hero, and have a hashtag after him.
I mean, just the fact that he helped to solve the Golden State Killer case like days before his retirement is just staggering. So yeah, he definitely didn't expect that.
Did you feel like you were worthy of being at the table with Billy Jensen and Paul Haynes?
Yeah, only because we're like the hosts, so we can ask them questions.
Good point.
We don't have to know everything. We just get the info out of them.
I started to have flop sweat the second Paul Haynes opened his mouth.
Really smart guys.
And Billy's great. Billy's really smart too.
And Maggie too.
Right. But we knew them. We had talked to them already. So Paul was sort of the wild card. And once he started talking, I felt I didn't deserve to be sitting next to him.
It was a whirlwind of a weekend, and we even had some drinks with Payne Lindsay one night, Lance, and his creative producer, Meredith, and his intern, Haley. So that was really fun, just kind of talking shop with Payne.
Yeah, a couple of superstars that work with him, Meredith and Haley, and Payne himself is a gracious and articulate guy. We all kind of met by chance coming back from dinner, and we spent the next couple of hours just sort of shooting the shit with these guys, like talking about shop and just eventually talking about everything from like man buns to... Yeah,
it was really cool hanging out with him, and I mentioned to him that this was like the most normal anything felt that weekend, because at Podcast Row, while it was amazing talking to people, it's not like that's our normal life. Standing at Podcast Row, doing live podcasts, having people come up to us, get pictures with us, actually wanting autographs is surreal and very atypical from the way our lives normally are.
Right. Normally we don't go about town and sign copies of James Renner's book.
Right, but you know what is normal? Having a few drinks with some peers and, people who are in the same industry with you and having some laughs, some friendly conversation. So that was kind of fun.
I don't think there was a time when we were talking to people or, taking pictures. If there was a downtime, I don't think we ever didn't look at each other and said like how surreal and like fantastic it was, because it is so opposite of what our real lives are.
Literally wasn't a down moment. We did have some technical difficulties getting that live podcast that is already up there. That one, we had some technical difficulties getting it live. We needed to be bailed out by Justin Evans of the Generation Y, as we describe in one of these upcoming interviews here, Lance. So he actually really kind of saved our butt.
Saved Crawlspace.
So in the following audio, we set up these microphones at our booth on Podcast Row, and we had some conversations. I don't want to say they were random because they're with true crime people, but the order and the way it kind of came together might have been a little random.
It was anybody who was available at the time.
Right. So we have Justin Evans of the Generation Y who sat with us for a little bit, and we have John Lordan from Brainscratch YouTube channel, who is a guy we've been trying to get on these airwaves for a while now, and we're going to have him on a full Crawlspace episode soon. But he has a great show called Brainscratch on YouTube.
Great fashion sense, too.
And also, we talked to Morph, our buddy Mike Morford from the Criminology podcast, who had been covering the Golden State Killer. He's been on these airwaves twice in the past, 6 weeks. And so this will be the third time. We have a pretty candid conversation with him, just sitting there at the booth. There's some video on our YouTube version of these to kind of bring it all together for you visually. You can see what this Podcast Row looks like. And if you're on the fence for next year, you got to do it. Come to CrimeCon 2019. It's in New Orleans next year.
Right, New Orleans. What more do you need for an excuse to go to New Orleans?
Yeah.
June, New Orleans. I mean, the weather's beautiful. It's going to be true crime, so anything that you want that involves true crime is right there. And if you want to take a break from that, head out to New Orleans.
And the last sequence kind of makes it a real party, because we're talking with Maggie Freleng of Oxygen's The Disappearance of Maura. We're talking with Ottavia Zappala of the Missing Alissa podcast, and then John Thrasher and Daryn Carpe of the Martinis and Murder podcast just kind of walk on by, and we wrangle them into a conversation. You can see how CrimeCon Podcast Row really is a party. So thank you very much for listening. Check out this audio and follow us on Twitter at CrawlspacePod. Thank you very much. Here we are on Podcast Row, joined by Justin of the Generation Y. What's up, buddy?
I'm doing good.
Or as we like to call him, Justin, the savior of the Crawlspace podcast.
The lifesaver.
Yeah, the life raft.
Well,
My
I
Christ.
brought my laptop because I actually thought I might have some downtime to do some editing, which that didn't happen.
Right.
But thank God I brought my laptop.
Yeah, why, Lance?
Yeah.
What happened?
Best laid plans. Best laid plans. Tim and I decided that we wanted to do our Crawlspace episode for the week. We wanted to release the live panel with Billy Jensen and Paul Haynes of I'll Be Gone in the Dark, the Golden State Killer, Michelle McNamara reputation. And we were going to do the live show, the live panel. We recorded it. Nice, clean recording.
But to back it up just a second, we didn't have enough time to produce an actual episode for the week.
Right.
So in the last minute, I think it was Wednesday, we were like, shit, I don't know what, we were like, how do we scramble to get an episode together? And it's like, well, we're recording with those guys on Saturday. Why don't we just do that? And
all of a sudden,
upload
it was
right
a really
away.
cool idea.
We were struggling for about 2 hours,
Yeah.
and I'm surprised Lance's laptop isn't broken at this point.
Yeah, I silenced the bar last night. I
Slammed
slammed
it
that
shut.
laptop so hard that the bar, everyone was like, and then I went up and paid for the bill, and the bartender's like, here you go.
So anyway, Justin is a lifesaver because he has his laptop and just did this.
Fired up
this
Adobe
task,
Audition.
this whole thing in like 5 minutes. When
It wasn't even 5 minutes.
it was less than.
Took longer to take the file off of the hard
Yeah,
off of the
to
flash
transfer
drive.
it to a thumb drive. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was great.
Thank you, Justin.
So-
Well, how has CrimeCon been for you after all this?
If you can't tell, my voice is a little hoarse right now. I was losing it like after day one, and it's just I've been kind of keeping it alive with tons of coffee and sparkling water. But we went to the bar meetup last night. It was pretty cool. When we left, the Uber prices spiked to $130 to $200 to get back to the hotel. So
Is that a literal price, or you're exaggerating a little?
I am not exaggerating.
Oh my-
That
On
sounds like a great.
On my phone, it was $130. Everyone else, it was like $200.
What?
And so we took a cab, $30.
There you go.
I would have, if we had gone out after and that happened, I would have lost my
Yeah.
shit.
After what the frustrations
Yeah.
of earlier in the night.
I would have been like, I'm walking.
The cabs were just pulling up and lining up in front of the clubs. I'm like, they know when the
Wow.
Uber starts spiking.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Wow. So what? Who did you meet last night? Did you have a chance to talk to some peers, some industry elites?
Funny enough, I've actually never spoken to the captain before.
Oh, wow.
Until,
Really?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Never spoke. I mean, we've said hello, we've waved to each other, but we've never actually spoken
Wow.
until last night at the club. And so now we're gonna do it's like wife swap, but it's going to be host swap. And Nick and Aaron are going to get together and have a very serious true crime podcast. And the captain and I are going to be the male version of My Favorite Murder, apparently. That's what our fans said.
I love it.
And this is this for several episodes? Or is this gonna
I don't
just one?
I think it's a joke right now.
It sounds like a
Yeah, maybe a
amazing
Patreon
reality.
special or something like that.
Yeah. We'll probably try to make it happen. So
That's
it'll
awesome.
be fun.
That's great. A host
Cool.
swap.
I mean, what an
Awesome.
amazing thing! Like CrimeCon, though, it's just so fun to meet you guys and to hang out with all these other podcasters.
Brainscratch.
Yeah,
YouTuber.
Brainscratch, exactly. So, like, that's awesome. We've been chatting for months, and we're trying to organize an interview, and it just hadn't happened yet. And I found out he was here, and it's like, well, we gotta get this guy over here.
Well,
Yeah.
he's here.
Yeah,
Shall we pull
yeah,
a chair
come
for
on
him?
over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah.
I might be eating lunch here, so I might jet out and you can replace me.
All right, well, we got 4 mics, yeah.
But before you come on, I wanted to tell you on air
Yeah.
that I've been a subscriber to your YouTube channel for years, and every time I cover a case that you've already covered, my initial research is watch the Brainscratch video, because then I have a very thorough overview.
Awesome. I love hearing that. Thank you so much.
That's very consistent, very just straightforward, no bullshit. And I'm like, okay, now I understand what this case is about. Now I can go research the hell out of it and record myself, talking about it. So,
Awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Honestly, I feel the same way about these two guys, about Tim and Lance, in particular when it came to me doing my episode on Maura Murray. Your information was so in-depth, and that's one of the things I really like about the podcasting format is you guys are kind of slowing things down, taking the conversation into all kinds of different directions. In the YouTube space, even though I have as much time as I want, I'm still in this kind of episodic mindset where, I want to get the story, get it all out, try to be concise as possible, and I think that's why it works for you. But it's awesome that you guys just have all that time and freedom to really crack into these
And I'm
cases.
gonna lay on the compliments again and say your jacket is outstanding. You got
Thank you.
You got a snappy style going right now.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, yeah, your YouTube channel is great. How many videos do you have?
I was trying to actually count up how many cases. I'm well over 1,000 videos at this point, but in terms of cases, I think I'm somewhere between 300 to 400, and that's across the different shows. I've got Case Cracked, which is about how a particular case was solved. What's the linchpin thing that broke that case? Of course, I've got Brainscratch, which is kind of the most popular of the shows and the widest in terms of scope. I'll go from alien sightings all the way to unsolved murders. And then, of course, Searchlight, which is really the heart that keeps me motivated to keep doing this work, which is missing persons cases. Some of the most rewarding moments for me in terms of being a creator and doing this stuff have come from Searchlight, and in particular being in contact with families that have missing loved ones, interviewing them on the channel occasionally. I get chills just when I talk about it. So
Searchlight and Brainscratch are the two that I watch the most. And and it was funny because yesterday when I met you, I asked you about some old episode, and you're like, I don't know. And I'm like, I'm doing what my fans do to me. They'll ask me about something I did 4 years ago and ask me for my input, and I have no idea what they're talking about. I'm like, I know the name, but I can't, regurgitate the details.
It's a hard thing because I've always been terrible with names. So being in this business and being terrible with names. But it's as soon as people start talking to me about the details of the case, all of a sudden everything snaps back, and it's like, oh, that's right, I remember all this. Yeah, absolutely.
What do you say? You just said that you got the chills thinking about the victims' families, or what do you say to gain trust? And it's actual trust that this isn't like a superficial trust, right?
No.
How do you get them to feel comfortable with you?
I think it's really the approach that I take with the first episode that I put out. Typically, those relationships start because I just start an episode where I look into all the media and I'll talk about their missing loved one. And I really try to bring the humanity into who that person was, what was their interests, how many siblings did they have. So the audience is really getting invested in these as people. And that also helps drive home the point of how hurtful this is for the families, because this is your brother. This is someone's dad. There's so many relationships that we can all associate with. So I think when the families see that, they know my intent right off the bat. They know that I'm someone that's going to be respectful, that even if I bring up theories they might not agree with, that I'm going to bring it up in a way where they can trust that I'm really just trying to help and I'm really looking for the truth. More often than not now, they're coming to me. I really don't have to reach out to them. I just do an initial episode, and all of a sudden I'm getting it in my mailbox, or they're leaving comments on the channel and people are letting me know, the sister just contacted you. She wants to come on. Now, because it's been going on a while, I have so many videos of interviews that have already happened. I'll tell them, just go watch one of the interviews. And, if you appreciate the style, let's talk about going forward from there.
So you built up a cachet of reputation.
Yeah, essentially. And it's even kind of now bled over into my main Brainscratch show. I've just had the first series of really in-depth interviews there about a murder case that happened 10 years ago in Canada. The woman's name was Lindsay Buziak. She was a real estate agent, and she was showing $1 million home to two people she wasn't familiar with, and she was killed. And her father has been working on this case for 10 years now. Saw my coverage, once again, kind of the same mechanic, saw the coverage I did on the first episode, reached out. Luckily, there was kind of a good Samaritan that was working to get us in contact. And then he came on the channel, and we did, I think, 3 hours of interview with him that we released in 2 separate parts. And as a follow-up to that, now I'm being contacted by the staff sergeant for the police department, and he got kind of kicked around in those interviews a little bit, and I kind of put out the offer at the end of the second interview, hey, anyone we've talked about, if there's any other information that you want to clear up or you want to help us understand, you have the ability to come on the channel and do that too. Just reach out to me. And that's exactly what happened. I was planning on contacting him, and he literally contacted me before I could even get the email out. So
it's impressive.
Was he mad, or was he excited to talk to you? Or
it was a bit reserved. I mean, he's got the police officer touch.
Right. No excitement whatsoever.
Yeah. But when I responded to him, I was sure to tell him, hey, look, I know that we were pretty critical of you in several aspects there. I want it to be fair. I want to give you a chance to address all that. Which he definitely appreciated. He has to go through an approval process. So he was basically, his chief was looking into, are they going to let him speak? Because they do have their own media representatives that, obviously there's people that are supposed to handle those types of things. But he's kind of been on Dateline, and he's been the face of the case for so long now that I'm hopeful that he's going to be able to get that cleared and come on the channel. And hopefully help answer those questions. And, let's talk about some of those criticisms. To be fair, the father, Jeff, also had a lot of criticism that was coming in through the comments as soon as I started talking about him. And I brought those up with him also, and let him address those. I think it's just the best way to share the best information you can.
So why did you choose the medium of YouTube instead of podcasting?
It's weird because the medium attracted me first. I'm a guy that used to work for major media companies. I was an IT guy at 20th Century Fox for 7 years. I worked at the Dolby Theater where the Oscars happened. I worked with Cirque du Soleil there. It was actually part of working with Cirque du Soleil that started me down the path of doing YouTube. We started making these goofy backstage videos, just kind of on a comedy vein, and I didn't want to let that go when the show closed and everything went away. So I kept just doing it for YouTube, just for the fun of YouTube. It was really the Alissa Lamb case that moved everything for me. It just shifted everything because I was watching YouTube, trying to create and doing what I saw other people doing, thinking, oh, that's what I want to do too. But I really liked watching those creepy, mysterious videos. And of course, the Alissa Lamb case has the video of her in the elevator, and everyone wants to talk about what's going on in that. Is there a ghost in the elevator with her? The Night Stalker. I saw the face of the ghost of the Night Stalker in the footage. So I was watching this really wacky stuff about this case and going, I want a YouTuber that takes this seriously, because this is a young woman whose life has ended, and I want to consider some of the real world stuff. If we run out of that, I will absolutely consider paranormal. But I think there's more real-world stuff that needed to be considered there. As soon as I did, I think, just the first few videos on Alissa Lamb, it was like all of a sudden the viewers came. All the stuff I was doing before that, I was lucky to get 20 views or 30 views, and I had no subscribers. It was just kind of luck of the draw. I had a few videos, goofy, song spoof type stuff that got into the hundreds. I kind of did some orca activism stuff that, touched into the thousands. But the Alissa Lamb one, it's still my most viral in terms of videos. It's still the one that people talk to me the most. We bumped into someone at dinner last night, and he's like, "Oh, you're the guy from the Alissa Lamb videos." Yeah, I know.
To be recognized like that.
Yeah, it was really cool.
How many downloads are you up to on that?
I think my biggest video is probably somewhere around 400,000 views on that.
Cool.
For the channel, I'm just coming up on 10 million.
That's it?
Yeah, that's all. I know. I'm not a podcaster.
Yeah, right.
I need people to dedicate their eyes also, not just their ears.
Well, guys, I love you, but I
Yes.
gotta go eat some lunch. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
to
Yeah,
kick
it was
out
good
the
hanging
middle
out
of
with
it.
you,
Yeah.
man.
Can you give us
Yeah.
a quick 2 or 3 elevator pitch synopsis on the Peripheral?
Oh, the Peripheral is when you're talking about true crime, you're talking about victims, you're talking about mental illness, you're talking about drug addiction, but you got to gloss over it when you're telling a story. So my Peripheral podcast is an interview base where I interview people that are recovering from drug addiction, are suffering from mental illness, have survived a sexual assault, and it's just personal stories from everyday people about their struggles and survival stories.
Sounds
great
like a
work.
very, very constructive podcast. Good
Yeah.
for you. Nice.
Yeah.
I
Nice.
love that because it's focusing on something that, quite honestly, I see major media run away from.
Always
Exactly.
overlooked.
Yeah, as soon as you bring in any element of, this person is dealing
Yeah.
with an issue or a drug addict of some kind. All
Oh,
of a sudden,
God. Don't
that
say drug addict. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that missing person isn't important anymore.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is nobody has a concept of addiction or mental illness. So I just bring somebody on and it's like, here's straight from them how this is.
It's powerful.
And hopefully it'll raise awareness. It'll educate.
Awesome work. Awesome
Well,
work.
you enjoy your lunch. Thanks for
Awesome,
saving
man.
Crawlspace.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so
for
much,
having me
Jeff.
on.
Yeah.
It was good
It's
seeing
so
you. Take care
so
now.
wonderful meeting you, man.
Yep.
You know what's a serious problem, Lance?
Serious problem?
Well, serious personal problem.
Last time I tried to answer that, I got in trouble. Why don't you tell me, what's a problem?
66% of men lose their hair by age 35.
Okay.
So when you start to notice hair loss, it's too late. It's easier to keep the hair that you have than replace the hair that you've lost.
I look in the mirror sometimes and I question, is this hairline slowly starting to move backwards? Are there any bald spots yet?
Are you asking me?
I don't
'Cause
know. I mean, you were staring
You probably
at the...
don't want my answer.
I mean, how am I going to feel a year from now if it's just business as usual up there?
Well, the solution, Lance, is forhims.com. It's a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, sexual wellness for men. Thanks to science, baldness can be optional.
Hims connects you with real doctors and medical-grade solutions to treat hair loss.
Well-known generic equivalents to name-brand prescriptions to help you keep your hair.
On the way home from Wormtown, I sometimes stop at these gas stations to get a little fuel, and I go in and I see these snake oil pills or gas station counter supplements, but this isn't what you're talking about, right?
Wait, you actually buy those?
I just see them.
You know those aren't backed by science, right?
That's why I don't buy them.
But For Hims is. It's actually backed by science. And there are no awkward doctor visits or awkward gas station moments. You can save hours by going to forhims.com. You answer a few quick questions, doctor reviews it, and prescribes you. Bingo bango.
So easy. The products are shipped directly to your door, right?
Bingo bango. So order now. Our listeners get a trial month of Hims for just $5 today, right now, while supplies last. See website for full details. This would cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or a pharmacy.
Go to forhims.com/crawlspace. That's forhims, forhims.com/crawlspace.
Forhims.com/crawlspace.
So what's next, John? What do you got in the hopper? What's coming up?
Oh, the big one I'm focused on right now. So I typically don't do my research at night, but then I
scary?
came to, yeah, well, my brain gets all wound up on it, and I can't really let it go very easily. But then I came to CrimeCon, and there was a special PI breakout session that you had to pay extra for. There was a little extra fee, but I did it, and it went into the case of a man named Jonathan Cruz. And it looks like police assume that it was maybe a suicide, but his girlfriend was in the room. Single gunshot that killed him. A lot of debating about what's really going on with that
Clearly a
case.
suicide.
Yeah. So there's a wonderful private investigator here, Sheila Wysocki. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. We were fortunate enough to be right next to her, Danielle Hallen and I, another YouTuber friend of mine, sitting right next to Sheila. And I got to, first of all, experience the event she put together, which was amazing. I mean, she had, I think, about 13 different private investigators. We were broken up into groups. And it wasn't just a presentation where you're sitting in one room. You start there, you listen to the 911 call, and then the groups move into other rooms. One of those rooms, they had a crime scene reconstruction. They had the actual bed and a dummy in the bed in the same position. There was 3D models that were being run. 3D models are developed by another YouTuber named Gray Hughes, becoming a very good friend of mine. He does really good work and analysis on that. So it was cool to kind of move through this case and literally be going room by room with a private investigator leading you, telling you his insight and his thoughts on it. So I'm now inspired with that case, and at least for this Friday, that'll be the case that I cover on Brainscratch. And Sheila is actually looking to see if there's any material that is not public at this point that she can release through that episode. So there might be something special there for everyone.
Oh, that's
Very
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
Very cool. Are we? Is this going to be a video for you as well?
This right now, I'm going to definitely throw in my vlog this week of
All right.
my review of CrimeCon. John here with Tim and Lance.
Yes.
Hey, everyone. It finally happened.
Yeah, we got to get you on for a longer version, though.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anytime you guys
Yeah.
let me know, we'll do it.
And
Thank you so much,
when you
yeah.
come up with names for your shows, like do you go, wow, that's a great name? Like you're like a name, and this pen, this promotional marketing pen, it's got a little floating brain in it.
It's
It's
awesome.
amazing.
I've heard from many people that is the item of CrimeCon. People love that pen, and I'm thankful. It's interesting you asked that because Brainscratch originally literally fell out of my mouth. I was literally shooting the video. I didn't know what the name of the show was. It was my first video on the Alissa Lamb thing, and I got to the end, and it was just it just literally fell out of my mouth. I was like, that's it. It's a Brainscratch.
It's brilliant.
And from there, I asked the audience for some help, and they came up with some Brainscratch-related, like Itchy Mysteries. My review show is called Itchy Mysteries.
That sounds like something that I have on like the back of my leg.
You should get that looked at, my friend. So yeah, Searchlight also asked the audience for a suggestion on that, something that would kind of key into missing persons cases.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's how the Beatles got their name. They were just like, blah, Beatles. And they were like, what?
I've
is
got this
perfect.
rich. I've got this itch. It's a real Ringo.
Yeah.
But it is a perfect title because it's so visual,
Yeah.
and you get it right away. You just say Brainscratch and you get what it is. So,
Yeah,
well
absolutely.
done. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thanks for coming on, and we'll get you on Crawlspace soon.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for
the
having
full
me.
one. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Keep up the great work.
You
Thank
too,
you,
sir.
You too.
All right, take care.
Okay, here we are live at Podcast Row with Mike Morford of the Criminology podcast. What's up, man?
What's going on?
We're pumped to see you again, like meet you in person. We didn't really meet in person last year, and I feel like we've got to know each other a little bit in the past year.
Yeah, it's been really good talking to you guys
Yeah.
every time I've talked with you, and it's good to do it in person.
Yeah, I remember last year, and we've talked about this. I was just so intimidated by the posse that you rolled in with and the T-shirts and looking at the Golden State Killer statistics and being like, who is this guy? Who is this crew?
And more was like, well, who is the Golden State Killer? Like, we didn't even really know what that case was. I mean, we had heard of the original Night Stalker, probably really didn't hear much about the East Area Rapist.
Didn't connect the dots like most people didn't really connect the dots on this guy.
Yeah.
Unless it was, you or Michelle McNamara or Billy Jensen. Those, you guys are the ones that brought it all together for the people who never really had it, connected.
Yeah, it's sort of been a case that in a year and a half, 2 years has gone from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
And as far as coverage and people knowing about it. So it's been at CrimeCon this time last year, everybody was hopeful that the case would be solved, but this year it's a year later and here it is solved, so it's kind of surreal.
Yeah, it went 0 to 60 or like 0 to like 120
Yeah, exactly.
in
Exactly.
like 12 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah. It must be such a surreal moment for you right now. You just said last year it's like, well, hopefully it'll be solved. What percentage of you thought that it would be solved last year? And it must be so surreal to actually have that happen this year.
I can't speak for everybody else, but I know for me, I had feelings that there was a lot of good stuff going on and that the case was getting some really good leads and new technology with DNA and stuff. So I felt that it was going to be solved. It's just a matter of time. But to have it happen this fast, and it really went down in a matter of a week. Once they got information and acted on it, it was very quick and just amazing.
And you did say that on our one of the episodes we had with you maybe a month or two ago. You did say you thought it was going to be solved. So kudos to you. That's pretty awesome.
I didn't know at the time, but
right.
The funny thing is we had Paul Holes, who was the investigator on the case that had a big hand in cracking it. We interviewed him for the show probably, I'm going to guess 3 months ago, and we talked a little bit, and he says, I've got 10 weeks to go before I retire, and I'm going to be shaking the trees. Well, at that time, he didn't tell me this, but he was shaking family trees because that's how they caught this guy, by tracking down the family tree from these DNA results. So that's
literally
what he was doing.
shaking the
So
trees.
he gave me a clue that I totally missed at the time, but he was shaking family trees at the time, so that's what he was doing. Yeah.
What has the reaction been from the people here at CrimeCon when they go over to your table and start talking to you? What do they typically say? What's the first thing?
It's sort of mixed. I can't believe it. Congratulations that you were covering it. People still have questions and that I don't have all the answers to, and they're asking me, and I try and give them as much information as I can or direct them to where they can find the information. But there's people out there that know a lot more about this guy than I do because since between finding out and trying to keep up with social media and then planning to come here, I couldn't do a whole background check on this guy for myself. So when we get back, I have to do a little bit of an investigation and do them for my own, purposes and see where everything stands.
Okay, one question I have, right? So he was arrested at one point for stealing a hammer and dog repellent, and this was 3 years into the rape spree. Is that accurate about that?
Yeah. So he started out in 1976 with the first rapes, and in 1979 is when he was arrested for it and fired. And within, a very short time of being fired, he is murdering people down in Goleta in Santa Barbara County. So it was a very quick movement from raping in Northern California to murdering in Southern California.
Well, my question is, how did this not, like someone had to physically fire him? Someone who was a police officer had to physically fire him. Why didn't this set off red flags, what this guy stole?
Well, I think it may have, and they actually were surprised that he didn't try and fight the firing. He could have appealed it through the union or whatever police representation he had at the time, and he didn't fight it. So maybe he didn't want people poking around in his business at the time because they would discover something. And one theory is that he went to Southern California because he thought that maybe somebody was tailing him and watching to see what he was doing, so he might have just gone all the way down there just to get away from.
That's interesting. So they might have been on the idea of him.
Very possible.
Yeah, because they had thought for a while, correct me if I'm wrong, that there was a chance that this person was in law enforcement or former law enforcement.
Yeah.
And even back then, right, they thought that.
Yeah, and he always seemed to be a step ahead of people, and they thought maybe he had a police scanner. And
right, he set up perimeters outside the. So he knew like about police perimeters during crime scenes and things like that.
And then if he's at the crime scene and he has on a badge with him, somebody catches him walking through the yard, maybe he could say, "Hey, I'm a cop. I'm looking for a bad guy," and who's going to question him? So it's going to be interesting to find out if he was doing this while he was on duty, because you got a police car, you got a uniform on, you're walking through a neighborhood, nobody's going to ask you any questions. So that's the interesting shoe that's got to drop still. Yeah.
Tell us about this Zodiac DNA update here.
Well, the Zodiac DNA is interesting because it was a year ago, last April, that I found out they were working on some DNA stuff with it, getting DNA samples from some of the letters that they hadn't got before, or that they weren't able to work with before due to DNA restrictions and technology at the time. But I found out a year ago that they were doing something with it, and I talked about it a little bit, but they never did anything with it. And then immediately after they caught the Golden State Killer through this thing, I think that lit a fire under them because they suddenly said, well, we need to try this. Let's stick that DNA in there. So that DNA was just sent off supposedly now to try and get some answers to see what they can find out with that. And from what I've heard, they're going to get some information back in a couple weeks, and then from there maybe they find the right family and branch out and find the right perpetrator.
So you think there might be an answer here?
I hope
soon.
so.
Yeah.
I hope so. I'd love to know who it is. I mean, the difference is the DNA in the Golden State Killer case was really preserved, and there's a lot of it, whereas the Golden State or the Zodiac case is a little bit not as well preserved. It's older. They didn't have some of the same methods in place to keep the evidence. So hopefully the DNA is still good and they can get something from it, but we'll have to keep our fingers crossed and see where it goes.
We're rolling our dice on you because you're batting 1,000 right now. So maybe maybe next year we're talking about Zodiac, and then we'll ask you about some other.
What's Criminology season 3 going to be?
The Ripper.
That would be incredible.
You're going for the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Do they have his DNA?
I don't know. I've heard they might. I heard they had a relative that they thought might be related to him, but I don't follow that case too much. So I really don't know.
Let's just say they're shaking the tree.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
We use that, but not speaking in that way. We say.
And I asked him. It's funny. I sat down with him yesterday, and we were talking for a little while. And I said, so when I talked to you 3 months ago, and you said shaking the trees, you didn't tell me you were shaking the family tree. And he started laughing, and I looking back on it, that was like a hint that went right over my head.
You're like, why is he winking at me repeatedly?
Exactly.
Something's in his eye?
Yeah.
Is he really as dreamy as all the women around here?
He's got some female fans. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, seriously.
When I'm sitting next to him, he's just a regular guy like you guys. I'm just having a conversation with him.
Wait, are you saying we're not dreamy?
I'm just saying. I don't know. He's got some female fans. I'll put it that way.
Oh, were you saying we don't have female fans?
What are you trying to say here?
I don't know. But from what I hear, the girls think he's dreamy. So
yeah.
They
sure do. I think if My Favorite Murder creates an image of you, a meme of you, then
I think that's a pretty legit. You made it.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's a hashtag hot for holes going around that I've seen, and I don't want to lose credibility with him and start talking to him and asking him about that in person, so I haven't brought that up.
We will. We'll do that for you.
He's here floating around in CrimeCon, and he's just been much sought after, and people are just like pulling him over left and right, asking him questions. And it's kind of new to him, I think, but he's got a really bright future ahead of him, and so it's going to be cool to see where his career goes from here.
Yeah, speaking engagements and things like that, I'm sure.
He's going to have a lot of things coming up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What's your thought on the D'Angelo's mental state? Do you think he's playing that up a little bit?
Well, from what I heard, he was driving a motorcycle days before at 100 miles an hour.
And that was true. Okay, I thought that was just an internet rumor.
Yeah, that's what Paul Holes has said.
Wow.
That he believes it's
looks
an
like he
act.
can't even form a sentence.
Are you kidding me?
And now there's some speculation that it was that because he's medicated, or was he just trying to act like that? Some people think that it was legit and he was medicated because he's on suicide watch and he's wearing something called a turtle suit, which I don't know what that is. It's something to keep you from killing yourself, I guess. But for whatever reason, they've got a tight lid on him. They don't want him trying to kill himself, and I think he probably would have. I think, the rumor of him having a roast in the oven, telling the police that when they picked him up, was true.
That was true too.
That was
Unbelievable.
True. That was true right from a witness's mouth. I got that. And it's it's his attempt probably to get in there and maybe get a gun, shoot himself, shoot them.
Right.
They were even concerned that he might have. I better hold on. I don't want to say something else that I heard, so I'm going to stop right there. But they had some concerns that he might harm himself or some others. Some of the police at the scene. So. They didn't want him to go in and check on his roast. They said they would do that for him.
Yeah, seriously. In the mug shot of that was taken that came out a week or two ago, he looks like he's got a bandage on his head. It looks like some scrapes on his face. Did he get a beating?
I don't know. I didn't hear that part. I'm hoping that he got a beating.
He caught a quick beating.
Might have bumped his head. Maybe they didn't cover his head
a couple times going into the police car.
Yeah, they were like, oops.
That would be too bad.
Yeah. But how they approached him was they had a random guy go up to him when he was out in his yard and say, "I'm lost. Can I have some directions, please?" And he got into a little confrontation with the officer, the undercover officer. And while his back was turned, they just swarmed on him and took him down. And whisked him right away immediately. Got his daughter was inside the house, didn't even know he was taken away, and took him to the station and interrogated him for hours, and they finally charged him at after 2 a.m. or whatever.
Wow.
What was like the root of that altercation?
I don't know. I don't know what. I don't know that it got
can't help
physical.
himself.
Yeah, I don't know that it got physical, but he according to some people, was very argumentative and sometimes shouted at people, and maybe because the guy was in his yard, who knows, but
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, luckily it
That
was just a ruse to try and get his guard down, and it worked. So
Unreal.
Wow, I couldn't even imagine being one of the arresting officers and the adrenaline that's going through you. Like, I'm about to take down the most prolific serial offender in American history. He's right there. He's right in front of me.
It's insane, and then to hear it from people like Paul Holes telling me about it, face to face is really, really cool. The people that are there doing it, when they're telling you how it went down, it's stuff you can't make up.
Lance, this Sunday is Mother's Day?
It really flies up on you, doesn't it?
Really does. Got to make sure you get the gifts for the moms in your life.
Exactly. These days come and go too fast, and you really need to get on it, people.
You'll never appreciate your mom to the full extent until you actually have kids yourself. That's how I feel about it. But now that I do have kids, I'm like, oh man, I wish I could have bought my mom all the flowers in the world.
And Tim, don't all the moms out there deserve more than just one day?
Oh my, they deserve 365 days.
Exactly. When you send her Pro Flowers for Mother's Day, she's guaranteed to have at least 7 of those days of fresh, beautiful flowers.
So right now, our listeners can send 100 colorful blooms with a free glass vase, starting at just $19.99 plus shipping and handling with our promo code Crawlspace.
With fresh flowers, guaranteed delivery, and unique vases and accessories that Mom will love, Pro Flowers has everything you need to get your Mother's Day shopping done for all the moms you know.
Just choose the delivery date you want, and it's guaranteed. You can even get your gift delivered on Mother's Day, May 13th.
Hurry and don't delay. Order today. Mother's Day is right around the corner.
Only way to get 100 colorful blooms with a free glass vase starting at $19.99 is to visit proflowers.com.
Click on the blue microphone in the upper right corner and use our promo code Crawlspace.
That's proflowers.com, code Crawlspace.
Shower your moms with 100 colorful blooms with a free glass vase.
Spoil them because they deserve it. I feel like this has really inspired a lot of people, and I think it inspired us to release a kind of a more pointed episode of Missing Maura Murray. Like, this is going to have an effect on the community in a very positive way, not just DNA stuff like with law enforcement, but with people like us, people who listen to your podcast who are now like, holy shit,
Like this guy and Mike Ferguson, they pulled together this information. Not to mention Michelle McNamara is a citizen, and anyone can do this too. Anyone can jump in and do this, but obviously do it responsibly. But and that's a big thing. But there's a learning curve there. But people can do this too.
Yeah. It's all you need is a microphone and some good information and people that are willing to share it and hear it. Whether it's on a podcast or on social media, just getting the information out there, making people aware of it, because you never know. It's just going to take the right person that hears something to come forward with information, and maybe that's what makes the difference in a case.
Yeah, and we actually talked to a detective who was at our meet and greet earlier today, and just got into a conversation with him about crowdsourced information and what they do with it. And overall, they appreciate it. Overall, they will go through any information that the public brings to them, just like the information that they gather themselves. It goes into a stack of this went nowhere or this went somewhere. And he wanted to stress that people shouldn't get frustrated with their poker face. It's like when you show up with something, we're not going to jump up and down and say, like, this is it. He's like, we might do that in the background if it is it, but, anybody, any information that's gathered, they have to have a poker face about. And he also said, which is something that I guess is obvious, but I never really thought of that much, was a lot of the times the public assumes that someone else saw something and said it. A lot of the times if something happens and someone saw something and they know that they were amongst other people, they tend to not say anything because they just think the other person delivered that information already.
Oh, yeah. And you see that as, well, I don't need to say something because I'm sure somebody already provided a tip. Or I worked with this weird guy, and I think he might be the killer, but I'm sure one of my other coworkers gave that tip already, so I don't need to. So
that's a weird human element, I feel like.
Yeah, it's important to come forward and share information, and it may be good, it may be bad, and they will usually weed through those things. And if the guy's never set foot in the state, they're going to discard that pretty quick if they can roll them out that way. But if it bears looking into it further, they're going to move them along and look at them closer. So it doesn't hurt to provide a tip, and if it's not the guy, they'll just move on and thank you for the information and look at the next guy.
He actually said they'd rather look at something that went nowhere 1,000 times than nothing.
Yes.
And so don't think you're being a nuisance.
Yeah, it makes sense.
That's their job.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like the terrorism stuff that goes on. If you see something, say something. It's if something looks out of the ordinary, it may be. If there's a weird guy that's going out 3 a.m. and moving stuff in and out of his house and driving around odd hours of the night and fits a profile, the worst thing you can do is say something and they check him out and it's not the guy and they move on. You're not upturning his life. You're just providing a tip. They'll check it out and it may lead nowhere, but it's worth trying to put the information out there and do the tip.
Yep. Well, thanks for joining us, Morph. What's the future of Criminology Season 2? Because everything's in flux for you.
Yeah, it's. We were on episode 10 of 12, I think, when this happened, and now we don't necessarily want to finish the season because there's so much stuff unfolding that it's like, where do we go from here? And it may go on, and more information may come out, and see if it goes to trial. And who knows? Now Zodiac's got DNA in the system. Maybe that's going to come up again, which would affect season 1.
You guys will never get to season 3.
It's going to be all bouncing back and forth between Golden State Killer and Zodiac.
Just stop solving.
Yes,
let me catch up.
The next case might be something out of the Midwest that nobody's ever heard of. Who knows? Just to have something a little bit smaller to work with that we can explore a little bit further, but without it blowing up. But who knows?
Great problem to have.
It's a great problem to have, exactly. So it's better to have some answers and get some things solved than just keep wondering and leave it unanswered.
Okay, here we are on Podcast Row with Ottavia Zappala.
Ottavia Zappala.
Ottavia Zappala.
Ottavia Zappala.
She's like, God damn it, just call me O. I told you to just call me O.
You can call me O. But you're doing better.
Thank you. I'm trying.
You've made progress since the first
Is
time.
Ottavia Zappala.
It is more of an
Zappala.
O sound, or what are we doing wrong? Ottavia Zappala.
Ottavia.
Well, the accent is on the last A, so it's like Zappala.
Zappala. So the inflection's at the very end.
Yeah,
Zappala.
exactly.
Zappala.
And it's not Ottavia, it's Ottavia. It's hard.
Wait,
it's
well,
hard.
okay. What's the difference with the O sound then? What are we doing wrong with it?
Well, it's not O, it's Ottavia.
What? Okay, that
It kind of sounds like an A.
I thought I had
Ottavia.
it, but that part I don't even.
But you know what? Don't worry about it. I'm so used
All right,
to
thanks
people.
for joining us at the table here.
We can stop talking about my name. I should change my name.
No,
maybe.
no. You have
we
a
should
great
change
name.
our attitudes.
Yeah, we should just not be such immature jackasses.
You're not a jackass.
You're
Yeah,
not.
well, you haven't hung out with us long enough then.
You're just not doing it on purpose. It's not like you're.
Okay, so we're naive jackasses. Thanks, Ottavia.
Oh my God.
Okay, so you do Missing Alissa, the podcast Missing Alissa, about the disappearance of Alissa Turney. We just had you on Crawlspace. You have a fantastic podcast, and
please
thank
listen
you
to
for
this if you
doing
haven't
that.
listened to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
You're too kind, guys.
No, we're.
I love
we're
being on the
honest.
show with you. It really boosted my listeners. I'm still really like an indie production, but
Yeah.
I
We all are.
love doing this, and I'm gonna work on a new case soon. I am working on a new case.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures. You're like on your Instagram feed. You've been hanging out in the desert with law enforcement. What's going on?
It's been the disappearance happened on the border between New Mexico and Arizona in a really remote place in a campground. This woman just disappeared in really mysterious circumstances. So it's kind of creepy going to a campground up in the Chiricahua Mountains in the middle of nowhere, knowing that someone was snatched,
What? So tell us more about this case.
I don't think I should reveal too much. I would love to.
Okay.
Trust me.
What do you guys ask Paul Haynes yesterday to reveal his sources?
Yeah, I
That was
did.
Lance.
You guys are asking all the wrong questions.
I thought we could get him. I thought we could get him to. I didn't so much say reveal your sources. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that he had credible sources and he felt
gotcha,
comfortable with his sources. Yeah. Hey, you got to laugh.
But one of the coolest things is how open the sheriff's office has been on this case, the campground case. We literally sat and brainstormed together, and they're so desperate to get new leads that they just, they really want me to spread the word, and I'm really appreciative of how lucky I've been with law enforcement,
Yes.
both in Missing Alissa and this new case.
Yes. How do you do that? Because every other podcast here really hasn't figured that out.
Yeah,
Either
how
I
have you
lucked out,
managed that?
or perhaps I'm just really good at charming people. I don't know. I'm a flirt, so
So, yeah, we try that, and law enforcement doesn't usually enjoy
don't
that. What's
respond.
going on, guys?
Are you guys leaving? What's up? It's John and Daryn from Martinis and Murder. What's up?
Yeah.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm gonna go get some hot chicken because I'm in Nashville and we're about to leave in like 5 hours to go back to
That's
New
a
York.
good look, yeah.
It's not bad. You got to experience it while you're here. Last night was a fun shit show.
Yeah, that's a great way to
I
put it.
realized that vodka on the rocks can get you out of any situation, nervous or not, and we had a great time.
Yeah, all the panelists were so inspiring and interesting and funny. It was like, you don't always expect this genre to be so fun. if
Yeah,
that's
we
how
had like
put
a
it, so-
striptease with a guy in the Air Force. Like we were,
It was a good time.
we went hard.
That's
You
why
went
we were
for
there.
it.
Yeah, of course.
Live photo.
Live photo with them.
Live photo ops.
Photo op. There we go. Perfect.
Oh, so you knew how to take it above. That's a
Yeah,
guy that's
level,
paying
yeah.
attention.
Yeah, well, you want to make sure the chin has some structure to
Of
it.
course, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You're leaving too,
It was
Bob.
so nice meeting you.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Nice to see you. Nice to see you guys.
More like less touristic.
Wow, I love this. Just like everyone's just chilling right now.
It's a
Very
party.
chill.
It's a
I
party.
know.
So you guys doing this live show and you're releasing it as an episode?
I'm not sure how we're gonna release this yet.
You're
Yeah.
just gonna mute all of us when you said martinis and murder. Just beep it out. Okay, I get it. We get it.
Like,
And
how's your CrimeCon
from-
experience?
Yeah, just like,
We regret.
Great.
We regret not spending more time with you guys, though. So next CrimeCon, we have to make sure we put it on our schedule.
Yes.
I know.
Please.
When we
Yeah.
saw you when we first
We
got
were
here
like, hey, everybody.
a month and a half ago,
Yes.
it was like, we're going to hang out with them. Maybe we're going to be at the bar over there at
And then it
Martini's
was
and
just
Murder,
go,
and we
go.
haven't seen you since then
I know,
until right
it's
now.
true.
We're separated by one little thin layer wall, and
It's
we're
not even,
upset.
yeah, it's a piece
We're
of
so upset.
material.
There it
New
is.
Orleans, though, we'll get something on.
They banished the ugly people over there.
Yeah.
So you guys are lucky.
Is
You're
it-
the good-looking crew.
Yeah.
We
So
noticed
where's
that.
Matt then?
Who knows
You
where
know,
Matt
we
is?
don't know because he doesn't do any work for our podcast.
Yeah.
So knowing him, he's sleeping.
He's probably sleeping.
He's done nothing. We got to hustle for our dollar.
Exactly.
God damn it. We missed you guys. Thank you guys for having us
Thank
on
you.
here.
Yeah.
Thank you for swinging by and not being able to get away from us when we asked you to come on.
No,
Like-
please. I saw you guys post this on Twitter. I was like, we have to stop by their booth. So I'm really glad that we walked by.
It was really her tattoos that lured me in. It wasn't the blue
wasn't- it
eyes.
wasn't-
That's why
It
they
wasn't
keep
us
me
friends.
It
around.
was you.
Friends.
Listen, no.
Wasn't the frantic waving?
Thinking Sideways
Getting
is leaving
fans. See,
too.
we're usurping your fandom over here. We don't want that. Thank you guys.
Thank
guys.
you, John and Daryn.
It's all
You
right,
guys
guys.
are awesome.
You
Thank
guys
you.
later.
Bye.
Take care.
Oh.
Love that.
Okay.
So we were saying that you guys haven't been able to charm law enforcement or flirt
Right.
with
Well,
them.
we tried to
That's
flirt,
unfortunate.
but that didn't.
Yeah.
Well, it led to other things, but it didn't lead to any like case revelations.
That's how Art got all the Ellie interviews for us. He just flirted with Strelzin.
Oh,
And
those eyes,
there we go.
those smoky eyes.
I mean, Art's, you know, he's got
Yeah,
it.
He's got it. He's
Smoky
Ladies love cool art.
They love Art. My mom wanted to
Hashtag
meet
Art.
Art today.
LL Cool A.
So
God.
Is your new podcast live? Does that
Oh,
have
no. Oh, I thought you were talking about Missing Alissa. I was like,
No,
what do
no,
you
no.
mean? Yeah,
That-
you can
that one we
subscribe to
know.
it.
We know we can
No,
subscribe
not yet.
to.
It's not. It's absolutely not live. I'm in the beginning research phase. It's gonna be like 6 months before.
What?
You know, I go crazy. Like I
No,
read thousands
we were talking
of
about
pages.
this last night. That we're perfectionists.
Exactly. I'm a perfectionist. I will. It's the reporter in me. You know, I will interview like dozens of people and then edit it to perfection before like I
Where are you
release
laughing about?
anything.
We're laughing because the reporters in us is just like,
No,
oh,
I
hit
was,
record.
I
Let's
was
go. Here we
telling
go.
her
go.
last night how I begged you guys for weeks to get on a conference call and talk about what we're doing during our panels. You guys are like, we have time before the panel to talk about it. I'm like, no, I have to gather documents and bring stuff
Yes.
and write notes. I had to get producers involved for CrimeCon to get you guys to tell me what the hell was going on for our
I'm
panels.
like that too. I overthink everything. And they're like, "Come and chat with us." I'm like, "Wait, about what?" Like, I'm not good
Give
at
me the list of
chit-chatting.
questions
Yeah.
beforehand.
I wouldn't even know. I did a, you know what it is? I did an entire list of questions for Paul Haynes and Billy Jensen yesterday.
too.
I had an entire list of questions on my iPad. You know where my iPad was during it? In my room, on
you
the
go.
charger.
There you go.
So it
And
doesn't.
you were cool with it.
And I was cool with it. I ran with it. I you know.
I had them all
But-
on my phone because when I was listening to the podcast, I just made all these notes and then I didn't ask any of them. We just went with it.
See? So why
I know,
even
now
prep?
I know. I
Yeah,
know. Now
just
I know.
go with it.
But you guys are the experts, so.
So yesterday you pretty much admitted that you identified our format and you were like, "This is my blueprint," and you're going with a Crawlspace template.
Me?
Yeah, your first podcast was Missing Alissa, which was very similar to Missing Maura Murray, and and then you're
Oh.
like, I think I'm gonna do what they did and cover another case and have like an
Well-
offshoot. No, I mean it's flattering. It's
So
flattering.
I got inspired by your name, Missing Maura Murray, for sure, and I meant to give you credit for that. I brainstormed a ton of names, and this one was just it fit. And then like the whole idea of making a one-off story and then having an ongoing, I didn't know that I wanted to keep doing this, so
Right.
it just makes sense,
Right.
like to then have an ongoing series where you can continue to podcast without having to like have everyone resubscribe to your new podcast, make new social media, and like that's all a lot of work that isn't, you can
Well,
just
next year at CrimeCon, when you're sponsoring Podcast Row, just allow us 1 6-foot table.
absolutely, I'll give you some space.
Thank
no
you.
worries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you can take photos with me.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
don't be begging. Yeah, exactly.
But only two. Only
Yeah,
two.
I don't have time.
Yeah.
I won't have time.
So you guys are both professional journalists. You both went to school for this, right? So what's the difference between, other than what we just discussed? What are the obvious differences between what we do and what you guys do?
Go
And
ahead,
not even
Maggie.
just us. You can include other podcasters,
Well,
non-journalist podcasters.
Yeah, there's a code of ethics that we kind of have to
What's that
abide
word?
by.
What's that word again? I'm going to write that down.
Code of
Code of
What is it?
ethics.
Is that one
Ethical
word, or-
standards, guys.
it's like a cipher.
You know, one of the ethics that she's talking about is we try not to express our opinion about something or speculate too much.
Should we get James Renner
stick
over
to the
here?
facts.
Don't
Try to be neutral.
Right, neutral. Code of ethics. I'm scribbling notes like
Of course,
crazy here.
objectivity doesn't exist, really, but we try. And, with Michael Turney, I tried to, I didn't want to have a witch hunt against him. I just laid out the facts. This is what he said. This is what they said. I'm not going to say he's a terrible person and,
But he is a terrible person. Yeah.
It's a pretty easy conclusion to draw.
So that's the difference.
But that's the point in journalism: is you present the facts
and let
the public decide.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Well, what's the difference between James Renner, who is also an investigative journalist, and he'll say something like, Fred and Maura, they used to sleep in the same tent when they went camping, and then follows that up with something doesn't sit right, that doesn't wash for him.
Well, here's the thing, too, is so Renner and I were actually talking about this at lunch yesterday. I was grilling him on where did that come from? I want to see your notes. And a lot of times, with journalism, too, you have to have more than one source to back something up before you can present it as a factual claim. So his only source was hearsay. And abiding by the code of ethics, we don't really go with hearsay. So
that's a violation of the code of ethics, in a sense.
Yeah, which is, he's not going to get arrested for it, but
ethically in the journalism.
Ethically, he should have had at least another corroborating source of that.
Correct.
Which he says he did. It's all in his notes. But again, you usually want to have that person go on record and corroborate it, so then people will believe you, because obviously there's a lot of questions about where this is coming from.
Right. Like I talked about like what people told police in interviews, formal interviews. A lot of times, if I wasn't able to talk to them directly, because that's.
But that's the thing too. Like, so Renner put that information out there. And then it's our job as journalists to try and corroborate it. And so I had to ask Fred if it was true. You can't let claims be out there and not ask the person if this is true. So,
Right.
You have exactly.
I think that was my point in a ham-handed way when I asked Paul Haynes who in a sense who his sources were when he was talking about situations that happened in the courtroom, and he had sources. So I think in a ham-handed way that was my point in saying, do you even have sources? Are they credible? So
sure.
So people who he's talking to in that room and beyond would know that.
Sure.
And he didn't have to name specific sources.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys can identify that. Like, you can have a journalist say, "Oh, I have sources and they're credible," and you're like, "Do you?" Because just the way you're saying that doesn't sound credible.
That's kind of tough sometimes when someone says, "I want to tell you something off the record," and what do? You're not gonna, lie to them.
Exactly.
Right.
So when you look at, New York Times, White House correspondence, a lot of that information is coming from off-the-record conversations. They say a source close to the White House told us this. It's really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
But in order for, a really reputable outlet like the New York Times to let their journalists publish that, the editors probably know who the source is, in case there ever was some sort of lawsuit. The sources are recorded with editors. Editors have checked those things.
Exactly. Yeah, you can back it up.
Now, when people ask you if you have sources, if you have credible sources, you answer that with are you offended? I guess is my question.
No, people should question everything.
Okay, yeah.
People should always ask.
I haven't dealt with that issue because, with missing Alissa, because pretty much everyone laid things out in the open.
Yeah, you had that. And we had that for the documentary, too. We didn't have any really behind-the-scenes sources. All the police came out on record. Any information that we got.
That lady, sorry to interrupt you, even that lady who was scared because the one who believed that the police had some kind of cover-up, she was scared for years, but then she went on.
Well, that was the thing, too, with the show. Like, even though we spoke with Rick Forcier, we couldn't put out in the show anything that we talked about with him because he didn't want it out there.
Right. Yeah.
So there's some things that that you can't say.
Well, no, that's the thing with going on their podcast because they don't, they're they're podcasters, so I was able to talk about that. I know it happened. The evidence is there. I talked about it. But for the show, legally, they were really careful with that.
Right.
What's the most significant thing that's happened in your journalism careers?
Honestly, I would say the missing Alissa case is the most significant. And I fell in love with that work, and I intend to continue.
Yeah. Seems like you found a really good platform to deliver your story.
I
and her
absolutely
story.
love interviewing families and friends and victims, and I love working with law enforcement, and I love being in the thick of the action of an investigation. I mean, there's so much energy in the courtroom, on a crime scene, and when people are bouncing ideas off each other, like in investigating.
Yeah,
that's
how I feel too. I really enjoy having like a researcher and somebody who finds all the documents. I like doing the personal stuff and talking with the families and making connections, lasting connections. And I do it every day at my job, so.
Totally agree with that too.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Cool. Gotta go find my mom now.
Let's get her on mic.
Everybody's on mic.